Hello, and welcome back to Not the Same, a podcast that brings you true stories of real people sharing their personal testimonies of transformation. I am your host, Rachel Heinberg. We're going to get right into it today. I have with me a very special guest, Emily Ciaccio, formerly known as Emily Mitchell. Her and her husband are here with us in Johannesburg, and so I practically begged her to sit down with me and share her testimony. From the little I know about it, it's quite moving as a fellow church kid, and I am confident that many of you will also be touched by it. So let's go ahead and get started. First, I want to say thank you to you for agreeing to do this. I know it was a little bit under duress.
I did not agree.
Okay, technically you never agreed, but we'll just pretend you agreed.
Okay, so my parents were wonderful people. My dad is Pastor Greg, and so I was raised going to church every time there was an event at church, anything, 3 times a week, and that's all I ever knew. And at age 8, we moved to South Africa. Of course, at that age, that's when you get a lot of memories. And so this is where I remember most of my childhood is in Johannesburg. My parents were missionaries. I remember them starting a church in a little building and that not going so well. Then my parents moving the church to a tent at a park. And I remember all these other kids coming into the tent and making friends with them. And then we moved down the street and watching the church grow. Like at the time, I didn't realize necessarily what was happening, but I loved being here. I loved all my friends at church. Of course, I was raised with such security of my dad loving me. My mom stayed at home with me. She was always there. She would take me to school, pick me up. Like I never had seen my parents fight.
So before that, real quick, because you said most of your memories start in Johannesburg.
Mm-hmm.
Something I just found out yesterday. Your parents lived in Arizona when you were born.
Mm-hmm.
Then you moved to where?
Australia, to Melbourne.
You were in Melbourne, and then you went back to Arizona.
Back to Arizona.
In Prescott.
Yep.
And then back to Melbourne area, then to South Africa.
Yes.
So do you have many memories of any of those places?
I do of Melbourne. I don't really remember Prescott so much. I remember going to school, but I don't remember my friends from church.
Yeah.
Definitely in Melbourne, I remember the building. I remember going on outreaches with my parents, the multicultural atmosphere of the city. I had good little friends. I remember going to Sunday school there. But most core memories would be Johannesburg.
And did you go to school?
I did.
In Australia?
Yes, from kindergarten to 2nd grade.
Okay. So you started school in Australia?
Yes.
As a little American girl?
Yes. And so then I got an Australian accent very fast because they made fun of me.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did you try to talk like them because you didn't want to sound different?
Yeah. And I think when you're so little, it's so easy to pick up an accent really fast.
Yeah.
And then same when we moved to Johannesburg. So I was in the middle of 2nd grade. So I finished up 2nd grade when we moved here.
And as a little kid, let's just talk about that memory real quick. Were you excited to leave? Do you remember being excited or just kind of like, whatever?
No, I do remember not being excited because it was a surprise, first of all. I was sitting with my aunt at conference, and I remember looking up and seeing her crying and asking her what was wrong. And she said, "Don't worry about it." And then afterwards, I saw my parents on stage, but not really thinking anything of it. And so I went to go find them after church, and everybody was surrounding them and crying and asking questions, hugging them. And everyone's like, "You're moving to Africa." So like, what a shock. Like, this is my first time hearing that we're moving, like, and trying to register, like, number one, Africa and a whole new life. And so I remember one person was like, "Don't worry, when you go there, there's going to be elephants and lions." But that did not comfort me at all because that's kind of terrible. Just walking around with lions.
Yeah, I'm sure as an 8-year-old girl, that's crazy. I guess it is interesting to get a little kid's perspective. You know, you don't understand, like, wait a minute, what's going on? So then once you got here, you guys obviously started right away. And then you said you were in the little building. And I know your dad's talked about it a bit of kind of how it happened. Obviously, one of the things he always says is when no one came and then you just said something about, why did we leave? We had to, I don't know. What did you
We
say?
had a church. Why did we leave them to come here? There's nobody coming.
Yeah. So I think everyone, at least in South Africa, we all heard your dad talk about that. So what did you think once you got here and things started getting going and you said all these little kids were coming? How did you feel about that? Did you eventually get like, hey, this is cool?
Yeah, I didn't think that it was odd or strange. It was, in a sense, totally normal, even though it's all new.
Yeah.
And so many kids came in, like around my age. So I was very happy about that.
That's cool. That's very cool. And so then you guys were here for 7 years, right?
Yes.
So from the age of 8 to the age of 15.
Right.
As far as that goes, growing up, I know it's a little different being a church kid, but were you actively involved? Did you ever find yourself not wanting to be a part of it? Or was there any sort of like rebellion at any point or emotional or you just
No,
like,
I loved it. Like I was involved in everything, went on all the outreaches. I loved going on outreach. Obviously, we lived a little bit further out, so if there was something happening in church, it was a bit more difficult to be involved. But when we were there, absolutely, I loved it. My dad taught me how to play piano along with some of the other girls in church. And so I started playing keyboard on stage, doing the overheads. I think a lot of people, the old school, like know that I was there on the overheads and helping teach Sunday school. I loved that. And our first conference, my dad put me in charge of taking care of like the little kids that came in. And so, there was only a few of them, but I absolutely loved all of that.
That's cool. So then when you turned 15, obviously you guys went back. Pastor Mitchell asked you guys to come back to Prescott. How was that for you?
That was pretty devastating because, of course, every time we'd go back to America, I loved it. And I would tell everybody, oh, I'm American. But I knew South Africa a lot more than I knew there. Like, of course, you've got your different cultures. And so after all my life being like, I'm American, and moving back to America, like realizing I'm not American, this is a big shock. Like, even though this is where I was born and my family's over here, it was just a whole different experience. Your everyday things like going to the grocery store, like schooling, friends at church.
I didn't mention that you did go to school here as well.
I did go to public school.
Okay.
Yeah.
You weren't homeschooled?
No, just for the last year of it, I was.
So then you were used to a totally different way of schooling, a totally different way of life.
Yeah, just things as basic as doing math was so much different.
I never would have thought about that.
Yeah, the difference between a comma and a decimal point.
Yeah.
I remember doing my math work all wrong and my dad being like, wait, that's not how you do it. So those little things, like maybe they don't matter so much, but it kind of messes with your way of thinking. Like I've thought this way because that's how I've been taught.
It's all your cultural reference points.
Yeah, they all got shaken up.
I mean, I can imagine how you thought, like, I don't even know who to be. I didn't know how to be.
Yeah.
So you never went back to public school, right?
Right. I just homeschooled.
Okay. How about adjustment into the church? Obviously, we were there. I remember when you guys moved. That was when we were still living in Prescott. But you were so young, obviously not in the same circles of any kind.
Yeah.
So how is it in the church? Did you find it difficult?
In a little way, because I'm naturally introverted.
Okay.
And talking to people is maybe not so much my thing. So I did have a couple friends that were very extroverted. And so I would kind of follow them. And still, I loved God, still wanted to be involved. Like right away, got involved in ministry, got into drama, had my friends, still went on outreach, all that. I started working actually full time at 16.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so, where did you start working?
JCPenney.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so many church people worked at JCPenney.
I know
I did.
There was a bunch of us.
I think because Lisa, do you think because Lisa Haywood put a good word in, that's cool. At what point did you start to feel yourself questioning your beliefs, just wavering from the church girl?
Sure.
What led to that?
So when I was 16, I started dating who's now my husband for a year. And then I was 17. He had just graduated high school. And I think he got nervous about getting married so young. And so we did break up and that like destroyed me.
Okay.
And so not that I immediately was like, fine, I'm going to go find another boyfriend. It broke my heart. And then my friends started getting married around that age.
Okay. Who would have been your friends at that point?
Katie and Amy.
Okay.
Yeah, they both got married pretty fast after that. And Danielle Haywood, but she left to go join the military.
Okay.
And so not finding myself necessarily alone, but my friends
Your
had moved
comfort.
on with their life. And so, like all things leading to sin is very small.
Mm-hmm.
And so at work, there was this guy that was just very nice, that paid a lot of attention to me. And I never had bad intentions, but I really enjoyed that attention.
Yeah.
And so I was 17. Looking
Okay.
back on it, it was probably bad because he was 25.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, but you're young, you don't
Yeah,
think
and you feel
about that.
grown. I
Hmm.
mean, when you're 17, I remember I felt very grown.
Hmm.
You're not necessarily grown, but you feel grown.
Yeah, and I was working and I was going to college. And
Mm.
so I was surrounded by older people anyways.
Yeah.
That's another thing that kind of hindered maybe more friendships at church because they were still in high school and I
Mm.
was working full time, going to college, like
Yes.
working on getting my degree, and then now here flirting with sin with a much
Yeah.
older guy. I remember one friend, I was telling her about him, and she's like, Emma, don't do anything with him. Don't be stupid. I was like, no, I'm not. I just like him.
Mm.
And then it was really funny because he specifically loved that I was a pastor's kid. He thought it was hilarious that I was a good little girl. So I think he made it his mission to go after me.
To corrupt you?
Yes, literally, he would tell people that. He'd be like, Emma, tell them what your dad is. I'm like, oh, my dad's a pastor. And he's like, isn't that hilarious?
Wow.
Yeah, and
That's kind of wicked,
yes,
especially because you were young.
yeah,
And he's like, grown.
full grown man.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming this was all hidden from your parents
Oh, absolutely.
because I'm
Yeah.
sure your dad would not tolerate that.
No, they had no idea. And as a teenager, you don't think about it too much, but he'd always be like, what if your dad finds out? He's going to kill me. And I was like, why would he do that? Like, it didn't
Mhm.
enter my mind because 17, you're still technically a kid and he's
Exactly.
much older.
And you're naive. You don't
Mhm.
understand like the ramifications of all that.
Yeah. And so getting involved with him, he kept saying things to me. So I think he got a little bit bored with me and he'd be like, you need to get a boyfriend. You need a boyfriend. And so then I did happen to meet somebody else.
Your relationship with him never progressed into a relationship.
Not a proper.
So it was just this dalliance type thing.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
so it's just weird he was pushing you to get a boyfriend. So that was strange.
Yeah.
Like he just wanted you to be a bad girl.
Basically. And so I started dating another guy who was genuinely a nice person,
Okay.
but he was also in the military. So he ended up leaving. He got stationed overseas. And then again, this guy comes back in. And so now
Okay.
I'm 18 and like very fully immersed in my sin.
Okay.
And he would bring friends over, like I'd be at his house and he'd be like, you need to do this because these guys were all combat veterans. Like they'd
Combat
all
veterans.
come back from combat. Number one, they're already psychos from being overseas
Yeah.
for so long, whatever they did over there. And so he would make me do things with his friends and they get mad at me for doing that. But I did really like him.
Mhm.
And so it was very love hate. We would be blow up mad, fighting with each other, and then come back.
And you said you had another boyfriend who was gone.
Hmm.
And how old were you when this happened?
18, 19.
Okay. Were you in communication with this guy
Oh, yeah.
from overseas?
Oh, yeah. We talked many times a day.
And he had no idea what's going on here.
No,
Okay.
not at all.
Are you living with your parents? Did
No,
you
my
move
dad
back?
had kicked me out.
Okay.
He caught me going out, so he said
Okay.
no.
Where did you live? Did you live by yourself?
I lived in an apartment. I had gotten an apartment
Okay.
because I worked full time.
Yeah. You lived by yourself? Or did you?
Yes and no. Like I would have my best friend from Sin. She was getting a divorce from her husband, so she came and lived with me for a while.
But it was your place and the people
Yeah.
stay with you off and on. I see. Obviously, this is a distinct line where you crossed over. It wasn't just like you were flirting with sin. Now you definitely were like in it.
Yeah.
So now you have this boyfriend who's stationed overseas,
Mhm.
and then you have this other crazy stuff.
Hmm.
And so what happened?
Yeah. So at that time, I was involved with several relationships, juggling them around.
Wow.
And so he came back on leave, and we were supposed to get married, but
Did he propose and everything?
he did, like as he was leaving.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So being in a small town, people had heard about what I was doing, and he was very popular because he lived here his whole life, went to high school.
Okay.
So a lot of people knew him and started telling him, hey, your girl is doing all sorts of things, stepping out on you.
Did he confront you about it?
Yeah. And so we didn't get married. One part of him, I was like, fine, we'll just break up. And he said, no, you don't want to get married, and this is your out.
Mhm.
I'm not going to let you get
Was
out
he
of it.
right?
Yes. I
Or
would
you felt
say,
ashamed?
yeah,
Or
I think part of me knew that I was probably never going to marry him. And so I should tell him, and then maybe he'll break up with me.
yeah.
But he wouldn't let me. And he had talked about, like, when we get married, we need to go to church. No matter where we go, and we should get involved in going to church. I remember when I did start dating him, was like, I should settle down. So he seems like a
Yeah.
really nice guy.
Okay.
And so I thought I need to attach myself to him and we can do good together. But that never works. And so the whole time he was on leave, we stayed together, but we fought a lot. And understandably, because I had cheated on him. And so one night he said, I'm going out, come pick us up when we're done. I think the bars close at 2. And so
Before this, during this whole time, your different relationships, did you ever do any drugs, or did you ever do drinking and anything like that?
no, I never did drugs because nobody in my circle
No one
was doing
drugs.
that.
Okay.
They were always drinking, but then I did stay away from that. I don't know how I managed to do that until actually he came home on leave, and he's like, well, this is a safe place to start being with me.
Okay.
And so we did. So
Drink
with him,
together.
I did start.
Okay.
Yeah.
During this thing, he was at the bar and you were going to go pick him up.
Yeah. Because I was only 19, so I couldn't have gone with him.
Oh, so you just drank at home?
Yeah. So I didn't like enjoy the taste of beer, but probably did enjoy being drunk.
To forget
Yes.
stuff. Okay.
Yeah. So I went and picked them up, and we drove out to the next town, and we went to IHOP in the
Oh,
next
this
town.
was Friday night of
Yes.
conference. That's
Yeah.
why I was trying to put the pieces together. Okay. Sorry, real quick. This would have been in 2008.
Yes.
The only reason I know is because we were in India. So 2008. So this is all during the week of conference. Obviously, you're not saved. There's a conference happening, but you're off doing your own thing. So Friday night of conference, he's out with his buddies drinking. And then you go pick him up.
Yeah.
You take him to IHOP. And then you meet up with a friend from.
Well, I didn't know her.
Oh.
We went to the restaurant, and I went into the bathroom. He went into the bathroom, and I saw her in the bathroom. And not that I knew her, but I knew of her.
You knew
Because
who she was?
Yes.
Okay.
And obviously she knew who I was because she asked how I was doing. And for whatever reason, I started telling her about life. And she asked, you're not saved? And I said, no.
Wow.
I just had like a moment of honesty. And so she asked if I wanted to pray. And I said no, because yes, I did want to pray and get saved, but I knew
But you knew
I wasn't going to change.
Yeah, exactly. So you said no.
I did say no. And he started banging on the bathroom door, like, what are you doing in there? Because we were probably taking a while.
Okay.
I was like, I have to go. And we went and sat down. I'm watching, there was a ton of people at IHOP from
It
conference.
was crazy because it was so
Yeah.
late in the morning.
Yes,
Right?
I know. Party animals.
I know. Like, what are you doing? Go to bed.
So everybody had started leaving. Then we left. We're going down the highway. It's raining. We're fighting. And I remember saying, fine, I'm sorry. I don't care. And him throwing his seat back. He's like, I'm going to sleep. As soon as that happened, I heard this scary squeal in the car. The car started swerving. I was like, I don't know what's happening. And there was a car next to me. And I remember I didn't want to hit him. So I kind of aimed for the middle of the road. And as soon as we hit that middle part, we started rolling. I guess from what people have said that we rolled the car like 6 or 7 times. And I never blacked out, which to me is super scary because I remember everything.
Yeah.
Each roll. I remember things flying around, being terrified. And we stopped the car, and it is pitch black out there. There's no sounds. What's funny is I had just finished up EMS class. So I had become an EMT, certified. So like now I coughed and I knew right away something's not right because I just learned about this, hearing those chest sounds.
Wow.
And the guy next to me, he is out cold. I am freaking out. I'm all by myself.
Did you come to rest on your wheels or upside down?
No, we were on our wheels.
Okay.
Yes. I remember screaming, God, I don't want to die here. I am so sorry. Like, get me out of this. And then some guy came to the window. They had been passing by, which is a miracle, like that early in the morning. Nobody was on the road.
Yeah. It's not like a busy city. It's a quiet town at that time.
And so he held my hand until the ambulance came, and then they got me out. They flew us down to Phoenix. I remember being in the emergency room and them, of course, doing all these tests on me. And I was in a CT machine. The nurse was super sweet. She's like, I'll hold your hand, sweetie, because I was obviously terrified. And I started coughing up blood.
Oh, wow.
Which, again, I knew was not okay. So the nurse and the tech saw that and they started running like with me. And so I knew if they're running, that's not good. And I remember asking her, am I going to die? And she said, no, I will not let you die on my shift. And then I remember being bagged, being awake, which is terrifying. They had to do a breathing tube while I was awake. My last memory was the tube going down my throat.
They intubated you.
Yeah.
What was it?
They were bruised, and then that collapsed my lungs. They filled with blood.
Okay.
Apparently, I couldn't breathe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. So let's just pause for a second because I honestly have never talked to you about your accident. I mean, I've heard other stories, but I've never actually talked to you necessarily about it. So you said that you could remember everything, like you're spinning upside down. And was he yelling or screaming? Do you remember?
Oh, no, he got knocked out.
Like right away.
Yes.
So then things happen so quick, but your brain can make him feel like years.
Oh, yeah, 7 seconds is a long time.
That's a very long time. Obviously, we always think, oh, I'll just pray before I die. But you never once thought to like,
oh, no, not in that time at all.
That's
I just thought, I'm going to die and this is it. Like, but I don't think you had the brain power.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe, but for me, I didn't.
You landed.
Yeah.
You did cry out to God. It wasn't like, God save me, but it was, help me.
Yeah.
You know, and God sent somebody. So you don't remember anything. You wake up. How long were you under?
From early Saturday morning to Sunday night, so not terribly long.
And did they have you in a medically induced coma?
Yes.
Okay. So they just had sedated you.
Mm-hmm.
And so you woke up and...
I still had the tube down my throat. And so I was very confused because, you know, my hands are tied down.
Yeah.
I can't move my legs. I didn't know where I was. And then the first person that I saw was actually Rhonda. She came into the room. She did pray with me while I had the tube in my throat.
Yeah.
So I must have said it in my head kind of thing. You know, of course, my parents were there. And then they started taking the tubes out. I was still filled with blood and I had glass in my hair.
What were the injuries that ended up?
So I had totally smashed my right leg. It was broken. It was kind of torn apart. And so I was going to have surgery on that. And thank God for good nurses. The doctor wanted to leave me intubated until I had surgery. And the nurses kind of fought to get me off intubation. Yeah. Because that was not going to be for like another few days.
Yeah. And the longer it is, the worse it is on your lungs because they need to like
work on their own.
Yeah.
And so I had the nicest nurses. They were just wonderful to me.
That's great.
And so I do remember being absolutely terrified that the guy that I was with, that I killed him. I remember crying when I still had the tube in my throat. I thought he was gone. I didn't know what happened to him.
And no one was telling you? You couldn't ask, I guess.
Yeah, when we first got into the hospital, a nurse did tell me he's next door, but didn't say how he was or anything.
Yeah.
And so he had broken his back and collapsed lung. So then I thought I paralyzed him because at that point we didn't know what was going on.
And you had your seatbelt on?
I had my seatbelt on.
And did he have a seatbelt on?
He had a seatbelt on.
Okay.
Do you know if they get in a car accident in the military and they don't have their seatbelt on, they will not get paid?
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So even with my seatbelt on, I still got twisted in my seat. So I cannot even imagine.
You would have been dead.
Absolutely from the window. Yeah.
Did you have bruises?
Yeah, horrific bruises.
From your seatbelt?
Everywhere.
Bruises. No, but I'm saying from seatbelt too as well.
Yeah. So like, yeah, my whole chest down to my hips, both sides of my hips.
Wow.
Like even the seatbelt rubbed me so bad it tore my skin on my collarbone.
Crazy. That thing saved your life.
Absolutely.
Wow.
You know what's really funny is when I did wake up, some of the first things that I was asking, like I still had the tubes in my throat, and I asked who got sent out from conference.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's great. It's in you.
Yeah.
That's the thing about church kids. I mean, just as a side note, you can't run from it. No matter how far into sin you go, you can't run from that.
Yeah.
Did you eventually find out about the guy that he was going to live? He was going to be okay?
Yeah. And so the nurses were really good at that, probably because they knew that we were together. It was traumatic for both of us. So like they would give reports of him to me and of me to him just to know that we were okay.
Yeah.
Of course, my parents were upset, rightfully so. And it's really funny because Rhonda, she's dealt with her kids backsliding.
Hmm.
My mom said later on, she told me, she was like, and why was she out at blah, blah, blah in the morning? She should have been home. Rhonda told her, she's backslidden. That's what kids do.
Yeah.
And so that helped her a lot.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, you're the only child. They've never gone through this before. Everyone reacts different. She can barely talk about it now, and she was terrified. So that manifests itself in other ways. Sometimes parents react, and we don't know how to act. We've never dealt with this before. So for anyone listening, Rhonda would be your aunt.
Yes.
It's your Aunt Rhonda. She's very much, hey, sinners sin. Why are we surprised when sinners sin?
Right.
So how long were you in the hospital?
For 7 days.
Okay. And did
Yeah.
they do the surgery in that time, or did you
They
have to go?
did. Yeah.
What was the recovery of that like?
It was 6 weeks of
Okay.
not walking. And that was like the visible sign, but my lungs were what really hurt. Because I mean, they were bashed up. So every breath that you take is painful. If you sneezed, it was like the end of the world kind of pain.
Wow.
That was things that people couldn't see. They could just see my leg.
But meanwhile, your whole insides were
Internal injuries here.
wow.
Yeah.
So what about this guy? I don't want to leave him hanging. Did he eventually get out within the same amount of time, or did he have a way longer recovery?
Yeah, he had a much longer recovery.
Okay. Did you ever see him again?
I did see him in the hospital.
Okay.
So, I prayed in the car accident. I prayed when I woke up. Like, I really did want to change,
Yeah.
but they made me cut off communication. So then I started sneaking out to see him.
Okay.
But then we realized, like, it wasn't going to work. I felt so guilty because I ruined his career. Like, he loved being in the military.
And so because of his injury, he couldn't.
So he was able to finish his contract.
Okay.
But then after that, it was too much. So then he went off to his new duty station. Then the same guy is still around from before.
Sorry, real quick. You said 6 weeks of recovery. So were you back on your feet again?
Yeah, and then I didn't start working until about 4 months.
Okay, so he goes off and you guys break up, but now this other guy is around.
Yeah, so he's back around. Like, I changed jobs and everything. So I think, like, I was semi-trying to do right. And he found out where I worked, called my work, and got a hold of me there.
So then he finds out where you're working at a different job?
Yeah.
And what does he want? To keep doing whatever he was doing before?
Right. And so I had told him, hey, you really screwed me up. I don't want to go through this again. And he's like, okay, I get it. But of course, that's not how it ended up. When you go back into sin, it's always worse. And so I ended up doing even more.
Okay.
I was still actually living with my parents. And so in a very short amount of time, I was still 19. And so a very short amount of time being absolutely insane in sin.
Did you feel trapped? Is that how you felt?
Well, like when I got married, like I only felt self-worth by sleeping with somebody because then they wanted me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I get it. I've heard testimonies all the time. I mean, that's just the nature of it.
Yeah. That became like my only identity. So then again, just in several different relationships, any one that was serious, I would find a way to screw it up.
Yeah.
It was almost like, and I
Yeah.
can't deal with that.
Yeah.
I'm more used to somebody being mean to me. And
Sure. I mean, you hear that so often with young girls. They find themselves like that. Everything good is turned upside down. So you don't even know how to process good things. And you're just scared of them and you shun them and you're like, no, I ruin things. Don't talk to me. I ruin things. Let me just ruin you before you can figure me out. It's horrible. It's devastating. I can't even imagine how you would feel.
yeah.
So how did you escape that? I mean, you said you were even so much worse than the first time and you're living with your parents.
I had kind of only ever dated guys in the military. And so I was like, I'm going to switch it up. Somebody at work who was a genuinely nice guy, just worked a regular job, nothing military related. So we started dating. He was a very nice guy. The same thing, like being involved in sin, but he was actually nice. And so
you were trying to make something legitimate happen.
yeah. I mean, we would fight all the time, but he'd always be like, no, I'm not going to let you go. And so I think that like made me feel more self-worth. But it was funny. We went down to Phoenix because there's more to do down there. And so we ended up not coming home until like 2 a.m. And of course, again, my parents don't know any of this.
What did you tell them you were
I
doing?
mean, like they were always gone.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
And I'm 19. I worked and I went to college. And so on our way back, and it's like 2 in the morning, he was driving my car and a speed camera took a picture of him and it goes to my dad's house.
Wow.
He finds it and like there is no explaining this away. That's his picture. It's 2 in the morning. Like the timestamp is
His picture.
yeah. And so he's like, what is it going to take? You're going to be a quadriplegic next time before you actually get saved? That was like okay, I need to be serious. So I did pray with him that night. I was like, if I do not do this, good Lord, where's my life going to end up?
So the scare of like another jump started.
How many warnings can I get?
Disregard. Yeah.
Yes. And so I prayed with him, and Jennifer from church, one of the ladies, she had been recently divorced and was looking for a roommate. And so she asked me if I wanted to move out with her.
Okay.
So this is February. I prayed like early February. And then March, I had been living with her now for a month. So I had broken things off with that guy at work.
Yeah.
Because now I'm living right and living with a roommate. She was very saved, very on fire, loved Jesus. And she had been going through hell herself. And so
Yeah.
it was just nice to like being able to talk to somebody. And her stinking brother kept coming over. It made me so upset because this is Steven where it all started because he left me. And so this is my first boyfriend that left me. Yeah.
The one that broke your heart when you were 17.
Mm-hmm.
And so what
He would like show up at the house and be like, I heard you needed a table lamp, so here's a lamp for his sister. And then be like, oh, mom made blah, blah, blah. And I mean, he doesn't even live with his parents and he's dropping off stuff for her. Come over. Is there anything that you need done around the house? And so every time I'd come over, I would leave because I was so annoyed. I hated this guy. I remember telling my mom, he keeps coming over to the house. And she said something and I started crying. And she's like, Greg, come here, pray for her. And he's like, you need to forgive him. He's like, pray for him every day. God blesses him.
Oh,
So that I will. So every day I pray for him. God bless Stephen. Like,
little did you know.
yes,
That was
I was the blessing.
for a reason.
So he obviously kept coming over.
So real quick, did you really feel like you had bitterness against him? Like you needed to let it go?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. You feel like that's what kind of pushed you away a little bit? Okay.
One time after 180 concert, my friend Natalie, I was with her and Jennifer was like, let's go to IHOP. I mean, IHOP again, I can't get this place out of my life. And she was like, oh, by the way, my brother's coming too. And so I was like, oh, fine, we'll just go. And so we ended up going out and I was like, he's hilarious. Like we had so much fun, the four of us talking, and it was like late. And
so it was Steven and the three girls?
Yes.
That is hilarious.
I know. And so he's just like telling us about his trip. He had just gotten back from Djibouti and he was telling us stories about that. And, and it was just really funny. And like, he just had such an easy time talking. And so again, when he came over, this time I didn't leave and like we started talking and this was super fast. I mean, I got saved in February, which blows my mind because, you know, you look for something for so long. Yeah. And then that fast, and not saying that's right, like to get into a relationship that fast after getting saved, but we started talking and he officially asked me out when I turned 21 and we officially started dating. Okay. And then, you know, I'm like growing in my relationship with God and having my sister-in-law was, or she wasn't my sister-in-law at the time, but my roommate.
It seems like she was very instrumental in like grounding you.
Absolutely.
That's
like
amazing.
Very instrumental and just being encouraging because she loved God so much, you know, that rubs off on you. Yeah. You know, again, like going back on outreach and getting involved in ministry again.
That's what I was going to ask you. How was that? I mean, you had a couple years of hell. It's a little difficult, if I will touch on this, being a church kid and coming back. I had somebody tell me this, and she's also a pastor's kid of one of the leaders. She's an adult. And she said, you know, my heart really goes out to church kids. When you are a sinner and you get saved and you come into the church, you have the option. Number one, you only tell people what you want them to know about your past. Whatever comes up in a testimony, or you only share certain things. And you get the opportunity to leave all of your friends, all of your old life behind. When you're a church kid and you're in the church and you backslide and come back, everybody still knows you. You don't get to necessarily do a redo. Either they watched you sin or they were at least aware. You don't get to choose new friends. So she said, in some ways, it can be really hard because the people that were in your church are still in your church. And so you don't have like your past friends and then your new friends where everyone just sees the saved you.
Yeah.
These might be people that saw you saved and backslidden and saved. So it can be hard to adjust and be like, no, I really am a new person. No, I really have changed. I really am different. And she said that to me, and I was like, you're so right. Converts coming in out of the world, like they can leave everything behind and start over.
I could see that.
We do, of course, spiritually, yes, but you still have to face your past kind of for you getting back into the swing of things and then being who you are. It's unavoidable who your dad is, and that comes with a lot of pressure. So did you find it difficult, or did you find it okay?
Because it was such a big church, I had Natalie, who is my friend, but she didn't treat me differently.
Good.
When I came back, obviously there was some people like my age that were kind of off-putting,
Yeah.
or just, you know what I think it was, is that they weren't like, oh, you dirty person, how could you? They just didn't know how to relate because I
Exactly.
think they were super sweet people that got married super young and like had no idea what sin was.
Yeah. Like you have no idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
That's true.
people that were very helpful, I'm saved because of them.
Those relationships, that's something else that's obviously come up in my podcast a lot, is that everyone points to people. If it hadn't been for people just being nice to them, let's go walk, let's go have a coffee,
Yeah.
they wouldn't have made it.
Yeah.
And it's still true for everyone, even with you. If it hadn't been for Jen and Sharon, Walter, and these others, just being a nice person, that makes such a difference.
Yeah.
Because you just wanted to feel like a regular person.
Yeah. And like they didn't have to talk anything spiritual, just like life.
Yeah.
Especially a church kid. What are you going to tell them that's going to like change their life?
It's not like you're teaching them for the first time.
Mhm.
So it's just the kindness. I'm just a person and you love people. And
Yeah.
I think it's so, so powerful. And it's something that I've heard over and over again. You never know what they can become if you're just nice to them.
Yeah.
So how long did you date?
We got married in August.
When did you actually propose?
When?
Yeah.
I think in June.
Okay. I never realized it was so quick.
I know. I think that was very much the exception.
It's very heartbreaking, you know?
Mm-hmm.
It's just something I think you never want your child to go through, but I bet you have a lot more sympathy towards people than other people do because you lived it.
Yeah.
You've lived through things that I could never understand. Like, I can't even comprehend. I've heard all kinds of stuff, but I don't personally have a reference point where maybe you meet a girl and you're like, I've been there. God can help you. He helped me, you know, and I believe it. But there's something special when you've had to go through things and God helps you. Obviously, you don't want to ever go out and do crazy things so you can help someone else, but there's things that you will understand and you relate to, you know, more so than even I could comprehend. So you guys got married in 2010.
10.
And how did you find that first year? Was it difficult?
You know, it was one of those things like I don't think I would have gotten married if I hadn't married him.
Wow.
And so I think maybe that first year was difficult because like he had not come necessarily from a good home either, never seen stability or a good marriage than I had, but I had all these issues.
Yeah.
And so there was a long time that I would say like, well, you broke my heart. I'd be joking, but not
Throw it in his
necessarily.
face.
Yeah. And so he would get irritated by it. Then one time we were just driving. He's like, I want to tell you something. I just wanted to apologize for what I did
Wow.
when you were younger. He's like, I know I hurt you and I apologize for it. It's funny because years later, being like, I haven't brought that up since then.
That's what you needed.
Yeah.
Wow.
Even though I didn't know I needed it.
And he didn't know, obviously.
Yeah.
Something simple makes you be able to finally put it to rest and be like, okay, we're
Yeah.
past it now.
I think that was the beginning of like a new chapter.
That's the nature of life. You carry the good and the bad and the ugly. And, you know, we're all learning things. And sometimes people learn things early. Sometimes people don't learn it at all. And you have people that have been married 25, 30 years. Their marriages blow up because they never dealt with the stuff.
Yeah.
And you think, how did this happen? Well, just simple little things where we just have to deal with the past and whether we even realize it. So you guys got married in 2010. How long were you married before you got pregnant with Benjamin?
A year.
Okay. And so let's fast forward to now, and you now have 4 kids.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned real quick, but you've been pastoring 5 in total, right?
Yes.
5 years. And then you've been in Prescott now assisting for 5 years.
Yes.
That's really cool.
Yeah. So July will be 12 years in ministry from being on staff and all that.
12 years. Time flies, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So you have 2 boys, 2 girls for listeners, Benjamin, Jonathan, Gabrielle, and Aurora. So if you were to look back at your 16-year-old self when all that stuff happened, would you have said something to her?
Maybe just guard yourself and not let bitterness and jealousy. Obviously, my friends were moving on with their life and it hurt. And then I think I didn't deal with that properly.
Okay.
And I didn't deal with the breakup very well.
And so that changed all that stuff now. But look at you guys now.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I wouldn't have thought this.
Yeah.
In fact, the guy that I got in a car accident with, I do remember telling him, I do want to marry you. You have to marry me because I don't want to marry a guy in my dad's church because he'll go out and preach. And I don't want to do that.
Wow. Yeah. Did you know Stephen wanted to preach when you married him?
I did.
But you never wanted to be a pastor's wife?
No, I was good doing anything else.
And you did it willingly. That's crazy. I feel like it's like that sometimes. Like just in life, he's always like, okay, keep your plans. But I've got plans.
Yeah.
You know? Well, I want to say thank you so much for sharing that.
You're welcome.
I really appreciate you. I know it's not always easy to be candid. I want to say thank you to each and every one of you listening. Without a listener, the story can't be heard. If you would like to contact me with questions, comments, or ideas, please do so through the dedicated podcast email, notthesame.cfm@gmail.com. I love hearing from each and every one of you. Comments and suggestions are also appreciated. Please share these stories with somebody. Don't underestimate the power of a transformed life. Last but not least, I want to encourage you to take a moment and examine your heart. If you are not a Christian or even just unsure about it, you can be. John 3:16 says God loved us so much that he sent his only son to die for our sin. A simple prayer is all it takes. Acknowledge your sin, recognize Jesus paid for that sin, sincerely ask him for forgiveness, and you can begin again. Until next time, this is Rachel Heinberg, and you've been listening to Not the Same.